You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello and welcome to Orange County's longest running business talk show. And yes, I am your host, Rick Franzi, and I think we have a good show planned for you today. Why do you ask? Because Julie Keyes is our guest, and she is the founder of KeyeStrategies. Julie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure's all ours, but thank you for saying that. Okay, so I always start the show when I have a founder with your origin story. Tell me, what did you see in the marketplace? What was the inspiration and motivation for you to start your firm, Julie?
Sure. Well, I have been an entrepreneur my whole adult life, and I experienced kind of I had an exit of my own in 2007. And I just thought, gosh, it's got to be better than this. Somebody out there must have the expertise. And I didn't have the right advisors. And I learned some things the hard way through that process. And so I thought, well, I want to help other owners have a better experience than I had. So I started business consulting with a national franchise, and then started acquiring clients who were of the age where they really needed to learn the process of exit planning. And I just didn't have enough experience just having my own. And so I heard about the Exit Planning Institute, got certified as an exit planner in 2015. And ever since then, that's really been my foot forward as an exit planner. But I also am a business consultant, and bringing that entrepreneurial lens and experience that I had over all those years to my work.
I love it when I have a successful entrepreneur on my show who creates a business out of a personal experience or professional need kind of a thing. And I say we don't do well what we don't do often. And many business owners don't have a lot of exits. Many times it's their one and only bite at the apple, if you will.
Right.
So having someone like you with your organization backstopping that. So let's talk a bit about what it is you do in your firm as it helps, say, SMB business owners to successfully exit their business. What is it that you do?
Well, I think that first I'd like to just give a little bit of context around what exit planning is.
Sure.
Basically, what we do as the quarterback of the advisory team is to focus on business readiness and owner readiness. Those are two different distinctions in the exit planning space. And most professional advisors spend their time on the owner readiness side, such as, getting the owner's legal house in order with estate planning, tax planning, all of their business documentation, buy-sell agreements, things like that, contracts, making sure that they're all updated and that the business is actually transferable, whatever agreements they have with vendors, suppliers, customers, that kind of thing. And also their financial house with their financial planner and their accountant. We could really go on and on that, but really, I think you can, kind of get the picture of what owner readiness is. And then on the business readiness side, for people like me who are the business consultant, I spend most of my time on the business. So strategic planning and implementation, helping to develop successors if it's going to be an internal transition with a family member or management group, making sure that the business owner really feels ready to figure out what their next act is. So that's more on the owner readiness side, but just knowing that it's those two things and that it ends up being 2 to 3 years in terms of an engagement. And I really help the business owner coordinate their advisors that they work with currently, bring in other advisors if there's a gap, and then just kind of help them figure out what's next. So we don't go into it thinking that we have a solution to everything right away. I think a lot of owners aren't really sure what they want. They just know that they need to start planning. And so I think that that's the best place to start, is just, all right, well, let's just talk about what we might want and let's just see how ready you are. And then maybe we get other leadership involved as well, especially with the implementation of strategic goals, because, we want to position that business for its best possible outcome.
So when you say best possible outcome, can you define that a little bit more?
For sure. Well, I think that a lot of business owners would probably interpret that as getting the highest dollar amount for their business. And maybe for some owners, that would be the answer, but it's not all. In fact, most of the owners that I work with that are, owners of privately held companies, somewhere in the lower middle market is where I spend my time. They're interested more in having a good holistic outcome. So a best outcome for many of the clients I work with right now is, and many of them are going to go internal, but not everybody. Some are going to family members and some are going to sell to a third party. But they just want to make sure that they're not only getting a fair price for their business, but they've also got good advisors who are helping them not leave money on the table. That the structure of their deal is not going to put them at undue risk, like carrying a large note or having some kind of earnout that doesn't make any sense. Things like that really cause owners to regret the sale of their business. And then also the team. So if I'm an owner and I've had employees for a long time, they tend to be part of the family. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure that those employees are taken care of. And so that would also be part of a best outcome. So it isn't just monetary. There's all kinds of other things that factor into that.
So given your wealth of experience and relevant data, how are lower market SMB business owners exiting their business, Julie? Is there a dominant way they're choosing? Yeah. What's the financing vehicle? Strategic, ESOP?
There probably could be more ESOPs than there actually are. I think that there are still many misconceptions and misunderstandings about that exit option. And that's another show. Okay. I think that there are still a lot of privately held business owners who really want the legacy to continue with the business that, that they've spent their life building. And whatever that legacy might look like, I think that legacy is at the top of the list for many, not all, but for many. And then what could that look like? Well, it doesn't have to be that family or management take over the business and grow it and buy it and things like that, transition it to them. It can be that it go to, say, for instance, a private equity firm who's looking for a buy and hold investment, not necessarily something that they're going to turn in 5 years. There are groups out there now that are looking for that. There are a lot of different derivatives now of private equity than there used to be in the past. And so for business owners who think that that's not an option because they don't want to lose their team and they don't want things to change after they leave, I think that they should think again. I think that there are opportunities out there for that where they could stay on for a while. And many times they do. Many times they ask them to. Many times they don't have to sell 100% of the company. In fact, most of the time they don't have to sell 100% of the company. They can, like they say, a second bite of the apple. And so that can be a really great way to carry on the legacy of the business because they can be a part of how that rolls out and participate in the upside of the growth.
Okay, since I have you and you're an expert in this field, I have two psychological questions for you to help me to understand. From your experience in working with these folks, talk to me about two things. One, life after you're no longer the business owner and the psychology around being something else, and on the chance that they sell to a strategic or maybe a PE firm and they become an employee, life after becoming an employee and no longer the business owner. How do you work with your clients to help them navigate what I think are two very different paradigms that they need to be ready for?
Yeah, you're so right, Rick. And that's a really good question. I think initially my answer is going to be that it depends, right? Everyone would say that. And I think that it really depends on what it is that the business owner wants. Some business owners don't want to stay involved. They just want to be done. they want to move on to something else. They've already got their eyes on something else. Maybe they're going to get involved in another business. Maybe they're going to participate in some donor advised funds where, they take some of their nest egg that they've built. And, when the liquidity event occurs, they decide to invest in, helping other companies grow. Maybe it's philanthropy. Maybe it's volunteering, mentoring, consulting. Lots of people consult. When you think about it, because I'm sure you've been at this for a long time, when you think about the amount of knowledge and expertise that you've acquired over a long time, it's very difficult to turn that off like a faucet. It's there and you want to use it. And like me, I'd have to say that I'm in my second act, doing the work that I'm doing and helping other business owners achieve whatever it is that they deem for themselves what they really want. Now, if they're going to stay on and work for somebody else, we really have to talk about what that's going to look like and how, and think in advance about how they're going to, like, how are you going to feel when, what you would do is completely different than what they decide to do. And maybe you're not even consulted on making the decision. What happens when some of your staff are still coming to you and asking you questions, but you're no longer the answer giver? That happens too. So if we think about those things well in advance, then the owner can decide, or owners can decide, well, gee, could I even handle that? Or, some people can. They're like, fine, take the reins. Totally cool with that, right? I never wanted to be the CEO anyway. I just wanted to keep selling. Somebody had to run the show. I mean, that happens too, right? They just want to go out to see the customers and have the pressure off of them. So it really does depend on what they want.
So you read in the trade publications that there are a lot of boomers, let's say, who are getting ready to finally exit their business. And so there may be a good supply of businesses. But on the other side, you hear that a privately held company can be a very illiquid asset to find the right buyer for it. So how do you, in the work that you do with your clients, help them find the people that would be the right type of organization to take the company to the next level, regardless of what that entity is, a private equity firm, a strategic buyer, an ESOP, the employees? How do you help them?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me just clarify that I'm not the deal maker. I'm the exit planner. So I can help facilitate the owners working with deal makers to help them find that right buyer. But what I will do is help the owner to grow the value of the business. And I think with regard to some of the surveys that have been done over the last couple of years, that seems to be like at the very top of the list with business owners, regardless of the stage that they're in, is that they really want to focus on the growth of the business. And what does that look like? Well, to your point, lots of businesses that are going to be for sale and are for sale, but there will be more, right? So there'll be roll-up opportunities, companies that really want to merge or acquire to grow that way, if it makes sense, right? As long as they're doing it for the right reasons. That's another whole show that we could talk about that. But I think just, I think as far as like creating value, if a business owner can be away from their business for a month and the business runs well without them, and that's a huge challenge for many. Okay. So you don't necessarily start out with a month, although if you can take a month right now, you're ready, mostly. But if you can't, what would it take for you to get to a month? Like I've had clients that they probably had people in place that could take over. They just didn't know how to let go. And so letting go was a process where we took a week and then we took 2 weeks and then 3 weeks and then 4 weeks. And so over a period of a couple of years, pretty soon they're gone for an entire month. Everybody's used to it. In other words, don't call me unless your hair's on fire, right? I'm not going to participate in meetings and I'm not going to take calls unless it's an emergency and you need to let me know that it is, right? So they have a separate way of informing each other that way if something did happen, but it never did, not on my watch, not with anybody that I worked with. And so for owners out there that are not quite sure how to go about doing that, that would be a good test. And so if things happen that that or that you'd anticipate would be happening if you were not there, then those are your red flags on where you need to start to prioritize to be able to step away. Little things like you're the only signer of the checks. That's not good, right? But you'd be surprised. So there's that. You're the primary person for the number one customers or clients that the company works with. Like they call you first. So those are the things that you'd need to farm out to someone else and delegate out, right? And that's not always easy to do because you may not have the right people on your team to do it. But that's where I would start. And another area in terms of growing value in the business that I think a lot of owners really need to be focusing on is not only best people, right? Best and brightest, and hiring the best and brightest, but putting them in the right seats. And then having someone help you with strategic planning and implementation and accountability so that people have a buy-in for what's happening in the company and they have a say. It does wonders for your culture. We're not talking about top-down management. We're talking about buy-in and team approach and building a culture with people having a say in the direction that the company goes, especially your leadership. So I would recommend doing that. And then another and these are things that I see that are not necessarily there, right? So I'm making suggestions on things that could be there or that could be strengthened. And another would be marketing is usually broken and it doesn't support sales. Your marketing should support your sales. There are really only two things in a business that drive revenue, and it's sales and marketing. Everything else is a line item liability, right? And so if your sales are not like where they should be, and your marketing is not supporting them with good leads and good messaging for the brand, then there's lost opportunity there, which you can't ever calculate. There's other areas, right, that we could grow value, but those are the areas that I see most often. Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned earlier in the interview that your engagements tend to be 2-3 years. Is that what you find that the SMB owners need to get the business right and get themselves right to have a successful exit? Is that enough time, 2 to 3 years, or do you have a different window of time that you've seen too that business owners need to start preparing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just use 2 to 3 years because it doesn't scare people as much as if I say 5.
Fair enough.
No, truth be told, I have plenty of clients that have been with me 5 years, even 7 years. And then I have some that I've only been with for a year and a half and they're ready. So honestly, it depends on where they're at when they come to me in the first place. If they've been doing the things that they need to do to keep themselves prepared and ready, and what does that look like? Well, it isn't just to be ready for a sale. It's let's be ready for an opportunity. What if an opportunity comes along and your business is not ready for it, right? We want to be ready for anything, no matter if we're going to sell or not sell. And I think that we're heading into some times of great opportunity. So position yourself for great opportunity. And pretty much everything that I've recommended would be included in great opportunity. Another thing that I see is almost never there in any business is contingency planning. Like, what do we happen if? What do we do if something happens? What if there's what if there's a disaster of some kind, like so many of our friends and business owners in the country right now are suffering from. You couldn't have prepared for that, right? But maybe what they could do, or what you could do if you're in another area and you've never done this before, is to make sure that your backup is backed up so that you can still access your content, your company information, and your IP. Another thing that a lot of companies don't do is protect it. And so, talk to your attorney about what you have, what assets you have that you maybe could protect legally. I think it's important to do that too. Cybersecurity is also really important. Those are all really, kind of low-hanging fruit in terms of contingency planning.
So I didn't want to miss the opportunity, since you're a fellow podcaster, Julie, to ask you about your show. Maybe when what was the motivation to start doing it? You've been doing it for a number of years, and what do people gain from listening to your podcast?
Well, thanks for asking. I appreciate that. The name of the show is called Poised for Exit, and I wrote a book in 2019 called Poised for Exit. The first edition was written then, and it was slated for launch in March of 2020. And so that was when COVID hit, right? And so all of my speaking engagements, everything I had planned was canceled. And I tried to have it online, but a lot of people weren't used to jumping online for things like that. So that didn't go very well. I still had about 100 people combined for the 2 sessions that I did hold for the launch. But one thing that I realized is that I was going to have some time on my hands, just like everyone else. A lot of us, not everyone, but a lot of us did. And I thought, okay, well, I need to use this really, really well. And my goal was to launch a podcast show in 2021. So my major initiative for 2020 was the book and the speaking and things like that, and teaching workshops around exit planning for owners. And then in 21, I was going to launch the podcast. Well, I just accelerated that a year. And we produced our first show in June, the 1st of June in 2020. And so we're 4.5 years almost strong, weekly show. And it's exit planning content, but it's also business readiness and value growth content delivered by my guests. So I'm the host like you. I ask questions and they answer them. And it's either business owners sharing their stories, or it's subject matter experts talking about different ways to exit or how to prepare your business, or anything that can really help the owners create a better outcome, because that's the goal. That's the goal.
Well, I hope if people are listening to us live on the stream or later as a podcast or a video cast and they're in that space, it's never too early to begin to learn about exiting your business most successfully. So, Julie, I have really enjoyed this conversation. I was excited to have you on the show when you were suggested to me as a guest. I'm wondering if somebody would like to reach out to you, connect with you, learn more about your firm, listen to your podcast, where should they go to do all that?
Well, lots of different places. You can find the podcast on Spotify and all the other platforms. Poised for Exit is the name of the show. KeyeStrategies is the website, KeyeStrategies.com. And then I'm on LinkedIn all the time, Julie Keyes.
Well, thank you for being a guest on the program. I appreciate you sharing a bit of what you know and with my audience today. That's been great.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, Rick. You had great questions.
And I'd like to thank the audience. You've just been a part of Orange County's longest running business talk show. Julie's episode will join our catalog of 1,500 plus episodes that we've done over the years. If you're an Orange County entrepreneur or you're an Orange County nonprofit leader and you would like to share your story with our audience, it's really easy. If we're not already connected on LinkedIn, that's the best way to start. I'm Rick, R-A-C, Franzi, F-R-A-N-Z-I. If we're already connected, just send me a message on LinkedIn or through my email. Let me know you have interest in being a future guest. And between Haley, our producer, and myself, we'll help you to get ready for a future episode. Until the next time we all have a chance to be together, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.